video for A-level trigonometry, I will be going over some of the basic trigonometric identities that we will build on in the next few videos. The first identity should be familiar to you from the trigonometry you would have seen at GCSE. So it's sine squared theta plus cos squared theta equals 1. So I'll label that as our first identity there. Now, this identity comes from the unit circle. So I'm going to sketch it here below. So I'm going to first start with sketching the x and y axis, and then sketching a circle approximately of radius 1. And so the coordinate here will be 1, 0, and the coordinate up here on the y-axis will be 0, 1. And I'm just going to connect them to get a right angle triangle. And I'm also going to label angle theta as the angle subtended from the x-axis. So we can see here that the value of the adjacent side, so I'm just going to label that as the adjacent side, that's 1. And the opposite side, that's the opposite to angle theta, is also 1. So using Pythagoras, the hypotenuse, which is opposite the right angle here, is just going to be root 2. So that's the hypotenuse, and I'm abbreviating all three there to help us with our trig formulae. So from there, we're going to define sine theta and cos theta. So sine theta, if you recall from GCSE, is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so that's going to be 1 over root 2. And cos theta is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which here the adjacent is 1 over hypotenuse root 2. Then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to square sine theta and cos theta to get sine squared theta and cos squared theta. So we're squaring 1 over root 2 for each, so that's half for sine squared theta and half for cos squared theta. Then we can just add them. A half plus a half is just 1, so there we have derived our first trig identity. So we're going to derive 2 more in a similar form, but before that we have to define our reciprocal trig identities. Okay, so these are cosecant, secant, and cotangent, and we can write them as cosec theta, sec theta, and cot theta. And we're now going to define these. So cosec theta is 1 over sine theta. So it's the reciprocal of sine theta. Sec theta is 1 over cos theta. So it's the reciprocal of cos. And cot theta is 1 over tan theta. So it's the reciprocal of tan. Okay, so now we have those defined. I'll label those as identity 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so now on to deriving more identities. So what we're going to start with is we're going to go back to our identity 1. So we're going to start with identity 1, sine squared theta, shouldn't be x, plus cos squared theta equals 1. And what we're going to try to do first is divide each term by sine squared theta. So let me just make that a bit clearer. So what that's going to look like is sine squared theta over sine squared theta plus cos squared theta over sine squared theta equals 1 over sine squared theta. So that first term is trivial. That simplifies to 1. Cos squared theta over sine squared theta. Okay, so we'll go back to that term. But our last term here, 1 over sine squared theta, well, we've just defined 1 over sine theta as being cosec theta. So 1 over sine squared theta will just be cosec squared theta. Okay, so we can rewrite this as 1 plus cos squared theta over sine squared theta, sine squared theta equals cosec squared theta. Now this term here, we'll recall that sine theta over cos theta equals tan theta. Now cos theta over sine theta is just the reciprocal of sine theta over cos theta. So in fact we can write it as 1 over tan theta, the reciprocal of tan, but we've defined the reciprocal of tan in identity 4 here as being cot theta. So we can just substitute that in to cos squared theta over sine squared theta, because cos theta over sine theta squared is cos squared theta over sine squared theta, so that's equivalent to cot squared theta equals cosec squared theta. So there we've derived our next identity. So we'll label that as identity 5. Okay, now again we're going to start with, so similarly start with identity 1, but this time we're going to divide each term. So identity 1, I'll just rewrite it again here actually. Sine squared theta plus cos squared theta equals 1. We're going to divide each term by cos squared theta this time, instead of sine squared theta as we were doing before. So let me underline that actually. Okay, so if we do that this time, we can write this as sine squared theta over cos squared theta plus cos squared theta over cos squared theta equals 1 over cos squared theta. Make that a bit clearer. So this second term, cos squared theta over cos squared theta, again, that's just 1. 1 over cos squared theta, that last term on the right hand side, well, we've defined 1 over cos theta as being, it's right here, 1 over cos theta is identity 3, it's sec theta. So 1 over cos squared theta is just going to be sec squared theta. That's going to be 1 from there. And now this term, again, as before, we recalled that sine theta over cos theta equals tan theta. Right? So it's the same thing as up here where we started. Recall sine theta over cos theta equals tan theta. So sine theta over cos theta is tan theta. If we square sine theta and cos theta and have sine squared theta over cos squared theta, that's the same as tan squared theta because of the definition that we looked at before. Okay, so we have our final identity here. we derived, and we'll label that as identity 6. Okay, so those are some of the basic identities, and we'll develop this in the next video.